Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to show you how to build an RGB tree using simple materials for the frame such as 2x4s and a conduit pole, and we're using our 12 volt RGB 12mm lights, and we're using our Xlights 16 plug and play controller. So stay tuned and we'll show you how we got it done. So at the center of our RGB tree is our Xlights 16 plug and play controller. This is a 16 channel controller. So what we're going to do when we build this tree is each of the 16 strands on the tree are going to go to one of the imports. Now each strand is going to be about 50 pixels, so it's definitely a lot more controller than what we need for our tree, but it's a very nice system to do, and you can build much larger trees without any issue by doing it this way. I like the 16 ports for each individual strand just because it keeps it nice, neat, and clean. Another suggestion is you could use a Xlight 4 controller, which would easily have enough support to do this tree. But at the center of our tree is our Xlight 16. You can see these have a screw-on weather-tight connector. So what we need to do to start is build our pixels with a connector that'll just easily screw into this. This will make putting up and taking down our tree very simple because everything will just be able to screw in. So we start with our pixels. These are 12mm pixels we're going to use for this project. And you can see this is a 50 count. They come with a bare wire. The first thing that we need to find is a lot of these strands, it might be a little hard to see on video, has an arrow. And that arrow is the direction of your signal. So we want that arrow to be pointing away from our controller. So we always want to keep that in mind, because if we wire these backwards, they're just not going to work. So what we have is a pigtail that we're going to solder onto these. There's various ways you can connect these. I'm going to choose solder and shrink wrapping. And also, to make my life easier, is we sell extension wire. This is a 18 gauge 3-bin wire. We sell this in 250 foot rolls. And what we're going to do is actually add this onto the end of our strand and then put our plug on. And then that way we have a little bit nicer cord to go into our box. So when the tree hits the base, we can run this cord over to the controller, and it's just a nice, neat, finished looking product when we're done. So when we connect all these together, we'll end up with something with a plug where we have our 3 wires soldered together. We do have a 4th wire that's just not used. The reason is the plug and play controller does various types of pixels. So we're using 2811, which is a 3-wire system, so the 4th wire just doesn't get used. And as you can see, I've got about 2 feet or so of extra wire soldered on here. So when this comes down to the bottom of the tree, I've got a nice cord that will easily go out to my control box. And then this will just simply plug in here and have a wire that runs out to the base of the tree. So we have 16 of these to build. And then the next step after we build these pixel strands with our plug is we're going to put them on a strip, which will give us a nice and even look on our tree. Our next step is going to be to attach our pixels to some pixel strips. The purpose of this is to give a nice uniform distribution of the pixels. It's very important that all the pixels stay the same distance apart, so versus just stringing them up on a tree and having them blow around a little bit, this is going to give it a little more structure, so when you're doing your programming, everything looks really nice. So we have our pixel with our tail on it. What I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to leave the first hole blank, and that's because this is where it's going to hook to the bottom structure of our tree. And then I am just going to, these just kind of pop in here and they snap in here. Now, for this particular tree, I'm going to use a 2-inch spacing. These holes are 1 inch apart, so we're going to run these up at a nice spacing of about 2 inches. And this is a 50 count strand. That's going to give us just about an 8-foot length of spacing. And then again on the top end of the other, we'll have the top hole open as well, and that's how we're going to hook it to the topper. So that's kind of how these are going to work, and we're just going to get to work on filling these out. I do have a finished one kind of right here, so you can see when it's all put together with our extra wire, you get this nice uniform pixel thing ready to go. Something I will point out, if you wanted to do a larger tree, you could do a 3-inch spacing, because you'll run into issues on really big trees where you can run about 100 pixels off a single channel. So you could do 2 strands back to back. You can hook these strips end to end and connect them if you wanted to as well. So you could do, if you wanted to do a smaller tree, you could do a 1-inch spacing and have really tight. And another thing I'll mention too is these strips are good for just making pixel grids as well. You don't have to necessarily be used for trees. You could just build a quick frame and have a nice pixel grid of different shapes and such if you want to do it on like the side of your house or something like that. So, but that's the next step to doing this is we'll end up with 16 of these strips with all the lights built in. Next we'll start working on the frame. So our next step was to put together a wooden base. I decided to use 2x4s. I wanted to make it modular, so it's easy to transport, easier to store. So this is about, I took a 2x4, cut it to about 6 feet to start. We'll kind of see when we get all the pole and everything assembled if we got to trim it back or not. But it's better to be a little bit bigger than what you think you need than not. So this bottom one here is just a 6-footer, and then what I've done is make kind of, I'll call it a bridge over the other one. So these actually aren't hooked together, so they'll easily come apart, so you can store them or move them easy. And then I've drilled the hole, sorry my shadow's in the way, and I've just drilled a hole all through all 3 of these. And what I'm going to use for my pole is 3/4 inch EMT conduit. But as you can see, this just kind of sits over it. That other piece is screwed onto the top just to kind of give it some balance, and we'll see once we get it all assembled if we've got to put one on the other side or not. But that'll kind of help tie it all together, just in case it rocks or gets tippy or anything like that. So, but it's definitely drilled all the way down to the ground, and this piece just sets right over there. And then it's drilled for the pole, so we'll grab a pole and a topper next here and kind of show you the frame part. Alright, now that we've got our wood base assembled, we inserted our pole in it, and the pole we used was a 3/4 inch by 10-foot EMT. These were $5 or $6 at Home Depot, so very inexpensive. I'll mention too the 2x4s are $2.50 each, so not a huge expense to build the base either. So this was a 10-foot. I cut about 2 feet off the end to make it about 8 feet long, because that's kind of our goal, is our tree is going to be probably about 7.5, 8 feet lit when it's all said and done. So the pole is inserted into here, and it goes up, and then I've got a topper that we've put up here. This is it's a plastic one. It's got 32 holes drilled around it, so you could do a tree with as many as 32 strands on it if you wanted. Again, ours is just 16, so that's just about as much headroom as we have down here, and give you a whole look on it. So our next step is we're going to put a skirt around the base of this to have something to hook the strands onto on the bottom part of it, and what we're going to use for that is a 1/2 inch plastic conduit, so it's got a nice flex to it, and so we should be able to make a half circle with that to put it all together. Alright, so now what we've done is added some 1/2 inch PVC around it, the base, and this gives us kind of a hoop. And all I did was just attach it to the 2x4s with a screw and and bend it into the arch shape. Now I'm going to point something out here. We're building this so we can take it to trade shows and things like that. So you can see it's sitting pretty close to the ground. If this is going to sit outside in a place where there's snow or something like that, you might want to build your framing up a little bit. You might want to, you know, there's a couple different ways to do it, but you certainly could add on a couple 2x4s here to bring this up a little bit, and that'll keep you out of the snow and things like that. Just kind of something I wanted to point out, that that's not necessarily the best way to do this, but we want it to sit flat on the floor to show this off to folks in our shop and at shows and things like that. So that's why we did it this way. And then the other step that we've done here to kind of show you how this is all going to tie together is we've hooked our strand that we've been making, and you can see now that control box is going to sit right in the middle. So now you see why we've added these little pigtails on, so they'll easily attach to that. And then all the way up to the top, you can see we have hooked this to our topper. And what you'll notice too is I haven't cut these off yet because I wanted to point this out, is these strips actually have 47 lights on them. So I'm going to have 3 extras from when we made these. And all we have to do, because it's this 2811 RGB, is we can just cut them off. There's nothing harmless about it. Each one of these bulbs has a chip in it. So just cutting those 3 off. And then in the software, we just have to remember that we have 47 per strand, not 50. So I did want to point that out, just how the tree laid out and came out. So next up is we've got 15 more of these to put up. All right, we have all 16 of our strips installed. And I just want to take a second to point this part of it out, where it really illustrates the importance of using the strips. You can see now that they're all installed how all these pixels are pretty close to perfectly lined up. By having everything in symmetrical, it's going to let you do things like scrolling letters and text on your tree and make all your effects look really nice. So having the strips and having everything built identical for all 16 strips lets us do that. Lets us have that nice, perfect straight rows of lights. So I'll zoom in up here on the top. You can just see that on our topper we just have hooks that are hooking our strips in. All 16 of them are in. And the ceilings in here are about 8 feet tall, so this tree is approximately 8 feet tall, probably a little less just to get us under the rafters. And it comes down. And again, I'll remind everybody our base is about 6 feet wide here. I've got some clamps kind of holding down the base conduit. Reason being is it came on a roll, so it wanted to be more of a roll shape, so they're just weighting everything down to kind of get it formed in a shape. Probably might be better off if we use 3/4 inch instead of 1/2 inch. Probably would make this process a little bit easier to do that, but we have 1/2 inch installed now, and in a day or so we'll have everything will be settled and be just fine, but for now we got a little bit of weight on it. And as you can see, sitting in our center, we've put our plug and play controller. The yellow cord is the Ethernet cord that comes out the side. The Ethernet cord could go straight to a computer, or you could use the Raspberry Pi or Arduino board as your computer, so you wouldn't have to always have a computer plugged in. And all 16 ports are plugged in. What we've done is on this tree, while you're facing it from out here, from left to right, we went all the way to left is channel 1. So the strip that is all the way on the left of the tree on the end is 1. The one all the way on the right side of the tree is channel 16. And they need to go in order. And I'll go ahead and show an inside view here real quick too. And this is if you wanted to make this a 360 tree, you easily could. We could add the conduit on the other side and add another 16 strands in here. We'd have to kind of change our wiring a little bit to be able to do that. The plug and play controller certainly could handle 32 strands. It can do 2 strands per outlet. They just have to be wired end to end. But so that would be a relatively easy fix. Or you could add a completely second controller in if you wanted to keep it simple. This tree will probably stay as a 180 degree tree. So this part of the board here is will get cut off because it doesn't need to be 6 feet in this direction total. It'd be plenty of balance with losing a couple feet on this board, and a little bit easier to store and transport. So, and I'll remind folks, if you haven't seen the quick overview of this controller, you can get it does have tabs that come with it for the bottom. So what we would do if this was going to stay outside permanently, we'd put those tabs in and actually attach this controller to the 2x4s in our frame, and that would make sure it didn't get tipped over and stay exactly where you wanted it, and nice and stable that way. So that's just a reminder. But that's it. It's just put together. The last thing we'll probably do at some point is paint all the 2x4s black, just so it looks nice and blends in a little bit nicer. Probably paint the pole black as well, and you could even paint your controller box black if you wanted to. But our next step here is we're just going to put a little bit of programming in Xlights and kind of fire it up and see what it looks like. Alright, our tree is all done, and we've just done some quick little sequencing in Xlights just to kind of do a quick test to make sure everything's working, and appears to be doing just fine. So you can see that the nice even pixels and the 16 strings for a half tree gives us a nice density. It shows off the effects really well. And there you have it, guys. I really appreciate you watching our video. If you have any questions about how we did this in more detail, any product questions, just go ahead and check the details of the video and shoot us an email and let us know how we can help.